أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على رسوله المصطفى وخاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك سلام الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك الطيبين الطاهرين. God says in His Holy Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. God says, God tasks no soul beyond its capacity. It shall have what it has earned and be subject to what it has perpetrated. The verse that I just read right now from the Holy Quran speaks about a human reality. Whenever the subject of religion comes into mind or comes into discussion, one basic foundation that God has always employed in the lives of human beings when it came to revelation and when it came to ordaining things upon them and asking them to do things is that the human condition is always taken into consideration. And what I mean by the human condition is that the human being is a creature that is made up of a lot of different aspects and a lot of different factors. Human beings are very complex creatures. They have physical bodies, and therefore they have a physical limitation. Since we cannot fly in the air, God cannot ask from us to fly in our lives. He can't ask from us something that is beyond our own capacity. That won't be a just God. That won't be a merciful God. That won't be an understanding God. The Quran is replete with verses that indicate that God is aware of our own limitations. God is aware of our fear. God is aware of our physical reality since He created us. And whenever He ordains something, He takes all of these factors into consideration. So nothing that God ordains upon a human being in His religion should be beyond human capacity. And there are things that God even forgives, even if it is within our own capacity. So it's not like God is asking us to do something to pushing the limit of the human being to the extreme. No, it's within the limits of the average human being. And basically, for example, if we look at Salatul Jama'ah, our ahadith order the imam that is praying, the leader of the prayer, to pray at the speed or at the strength and capacity of the weakest person praying behind him. And that's usually an old person or a child or whatnot. Someone who is participating in the prayer and his prayer is counted. So even if there is a social or ordainment or a social law that was revealed, the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhum salam indicate that this idea of human potential and human capacity is something that is always taken in mind and into consideration by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He's legislating His rulings. And this verse that I just read is only one example of that. Now, if we look at religion as a whole, and we want to analyze the idea of revelation itself, why does God reveal religions? Why does God send down revelations? Well, there are many reasons that we can discuss and many reasons that we can propose. Some of them for the guidance of humankind, for the betterment of human societies. But one major factor in the revealing of sacred religions from God is the factor of human salvation. Religion was revealed in order for humans to reach salvation in the hereafter. What do I mean by that? Well, since the human being is made up of a soul and a body, and the spiritual entity has a specific form before it enters the physical world. This form is pure. It doesn't have any attachments to the physical world, nor any attachment to the things that are related to the physical world, such as passion and desire and love of ownership and possession. These are all things that are related to the physical realm and not to the metaphysical realm. When the soul comes down here and becomes entangled in these things, its removal, its moving back to a spiritual form, its transformation back into a spirit after death is very difficult. Imagine you have a bunch of strings that are straight, and you come and you tangle them, and they become entangled with one another. When you come to release them and remove them to make them straight again, it becomes a difficult task. Whereas if they stay straight, then you don't have a difficulty with that. You know, if you have a bunch of wires at home, and if you don't tie them correctly and you don't wrap them correctly, and you just put them in a box, you come to pull them out, and you want to grab a wire from this collection, it becomes very difficult to get this wire out. You have to go through a lot of a rigorous process of untangling. The spirit is very similar to this. It comes into the world, and the objective of the human being is to keep this spirit untangled, or without becoming tangled. To keep it neat, and to put it away in a way that if it wants to return to its original position or its original place where it came from, it goes there easily. And some philosophers and mystics have described that the process of death is difficult because of this fact. The soul and spirit has become tainted and polluted with so much materialistic attachments and became entangled in this world, that for it to become a spirit again, it has to go through a very rigorous process of becoming untangled. So basically, a rigorous process of transformation back into a spiritual form, detached from the body. What religion does is it interferes in this process. God reveals religion and tells humankind that because I am the one who created you, well, don't think, first of all, that you are a spirit, that you just exist like that. There is a creator behind you. But this creation has to go through a specific process and has to be within a specific system that is governed by specific laws. The laws of nature are there because the nature of the physical world has to be this way. There's no way a physical world could exist without these laws. It's not like God created a world and then placed these laws in them. No, these laws are an inherent part and an essential part of this physical system. When we say that there's a physical world, then this comes with it. It's part of one package. You cannot have a physical world without the physical laws, and you can't have physical laws without a physical world. So because of that, and because of God's awareness of that, he reveals something called religion. And this revelation comes as a mercy from God. And the Quran describes this as a process of mercy. And the sending of the Prophet, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. God is sending the Prophet as a mercy to all mankind. Because with this revelation, this difficult and rigorous process of human transformation back into a spirit, instead of suffering all that types of difficult hardships and sufferings after death, what religion does is it minimizes the suffering, and it allows human beings to enter heaven and enter a good spiritual abode after death without much difficulty. So if we were to rely on our spiritual development and spiritual exercise in order to perfect ourselves, and we know that this is a very difficult process for every human being, You know what this would entail? This would mean that every human being must not be attached to any physical thing at all. Every human being has to become a guru or a monk or someone who, and even if he becomes someone like that, who's constantly fighting against this physical world and materialism, this individual and human beings in general, they cannot, even if they're trying, they keep falling into sin and they keep falling into mistake, because this is part of the system and part of the human weakness. So God, seeing this weakness in the creatures that he created, he reveals to them a religion, and he gives them a set of instructions to follow. Now, these instructions are not just there for obedience. These instructions represent the essential need for the human being in order to work on himself and better himself, and at the same time allow the mercy of God and grace of God to come upon him and interfere in his life. So prayer, for example. Prayer is a reminder of the human being, of his origin. It is a speech with God. It is reminding the individual that there is a being that is above us, that has created us. And this communication between the soul and the creator of the soul reminds the soul that it has some duties and it has some responsibilities and it has a reality that it would probably forget had it not been praying. So praying, in a sense, acts as a reminder. And similarly, the other forms of meditation as well. A lot of people who meditate, why are people gravitated towards meditation? Why are they gravitated towards praying? We see in difficult situations, or whenever a person's life is chaotic, or they're going through some mental health issues, a lot of them resort to different forms of meditation. And studies have shown that meditation does help. It does remove a lot of stress, and it does assist a person suffering from mental health problems in overcoming these problems. Well, because it's normalizing the soul, it's stabilizing, it's removing thoughts, and thoughts are occupying the mind all the time, and thoughts come from looking at a lot of things, becoming occupied in this world and this chaos of this world. By allowing yourself to sit down and detach yourself from things around you, and internalize your thoughts, internalize your breathing, and communicate with your own reality, you're able to release yourself from those difficulties. So God gives a number of instructions, a set of instructions. And he says, for example, to pray. Prayer is essential for mankind. And another one would be fasting. And in Islam, we have to fast for 1 month a year. Fasting assists an individual in detaching himself from certain passions and desires. Fasting allows a person to strengthen his willpower as well. And willpower, a strong willpower, is necessary for any human being in his life to overcome not just their religious and spiritual obstacles, but even in social norm and social behavior and interactions with other people. A lot of people who have a weakness in making decisions, or they have a difficulty acquiring jobs or interacting with other people. By strengthening your will, you strengthen your self-confidence. So you're able to benefit both in this world and the hereafter. So fasting, and God didn't ordain fasting for the whole year, just 1 month out of the whole year. And everything that God ordained, he promised to give reward, and he promised to give forgiveness if a person undergoes that process or obeys that command. Now, what religion does, so to summarize what I said, what religion does is that it opens up a path of mercy. Since the person is not able to reach perfection and is inevitably going to suffer after death or in the process of death, religion interferes, and God says, I will give you a basic requirement, a minimum set of instructions that if you follow, and you don't even have to follow them all completely in a perfect manner. Just follow this minimum, and I, out of my own grace, will interfere and will forgive you and will assist you in this process, and you will therefore enter heaven. So the major objective of religion is to open a door of forgiveness. Now, people who are religious or want to perform these duties, they are allowed to go beyond the minimum requirement. They're allowed to go beyond just the outer form of prayer and try to use prayer and use fasting and use all these instructions to reach a deeper level of understanding. But a person has to understand that even when it comes to our religious duties that we're obliged to do, God has always ordered us to take it very easy on ourselves. Because this is, again, part of the human psychology and human nature. If we force ourselves to do something, then we're going to get an opposite result. Even when it comes to prayer, sometimes an individual thinks that if he doesn't pray extra prayers, or he doesn't, lengthen his prayer too much, that God won't accept his prayer. Well, God won't tell a person to do something that would end up giving a negative result or the opposite result. If you force yourself to do something for too much and you put too much pressure on yourself, then you're going to have an opposite effect, because human beings and their nature, they have moods, they have emotions, they have attitudes, they have aspirations, they have energy as well. Sometimes you come back from work and you're exhausted. So you don't want to put too much pressure on yourself. But at the same time, God doesn't want you to also become lazy and forsake your soul for other materialistic reasons or worldly reasons. So a person has to find a balance. We have a hadith from the Imams alayhim salam indicating that a human being should be very easy on himself and, in a sense, do things that he could do constantly or consistently. So we have a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in which he says, "The servants of God have only been commanded to do what is within their capacity, and they are not responsible for anything outside their capacity. But there is no good in people." And he doesn't mean every people. He means that people in general lean towards becoming lazy and lean towards procrastination, lean toward, if you give them leeway, then they won't be too harsh on themselves. Just like a child, the human spirit is very comparable to that of a child. If a child is given too much leeway, no organizations, no rules, I'm not talking about harsh rules, because that would also cause problems to the child or the child. But if you allow the child to do whatever he or she wants, then this child is not going to choose what's best for itself. If it's only a child, it's only a kid, he can't do this and he can't. No, a child is able to do certain things and is able to hold and uphold responsibilities in his life or her life. But you don't want to put the responsibilities of an adult on a child. That would harm them and harm their childhood. And at the same time, you don't want them to be too relaxed and lose their ability to develop themselves and improve themselves. So the spirit, in a sense, is like this. The Imam ﷺ describes faith as being 10 levels in some of our ahadith. This gives an indication that an individual has to begin at level 1. He cannot jump immediately into level 7 or level 8. Level 1 is a much simpler level and much easier level than level 2, obviously. On a day that you feel that you feel that you're gravitated towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you feel some spirituality, then you take advantage of that. And you do a little bit of extra work. But on days where you feel like you're tired, then don't feel bad for not doing this extra work. You're not asked to do it, because at the end of the day, the negative result is going to have a negative outcome. And obviously God would not want a negative outcome. So just like fasting, for example, the ruling of fasting is obligatory on those who are able to fast and those who are not sick. Whoever is sick, God's command is not to fast. A lot of people say, well, you know what, even if I'm sick, I want to fast. Even if I'm feeling very ill, I still want to fast, because I want to show my devotion to God. Well, this person in reality is going against the command of God, because God is commanding the individual at the time of fasting not to fast if he's sick or she's sick. This is their duty. This is their responsibility. Because if you force yourself to do things and if you weaken your body when you're supposed to be resting it, then this would have a negative outcome. Fasting is not there just for the mere sake of obedience and doing it. Fasting has an objective. and it has a reason for its legislation, just like prayer. Now, prayer is not allowed to be forsaken, but you're allowed to pray in different ways. If you're not able to pray while you're standing, you pray while you're sitting. If you're not able to pray while you're sitting, you pray even while you're laying down on the bed. So there's ways that you the human condition is taken into consideration when these laws are legislated. And a person has to keep in mind that whenever I'm performing a duty for God or performing an action for God, that I have to do it keeping in mind not having a negative effect or not being affected negatively by it. One thing, for example, that, and humans usually like to justify what they're doing. This is what we do, right? We don't have time for prayer. We don't feel good. We don't feel, energized to pray. But at the same time, we go and, do a lot of meaningless things in our lives. And this could be due to the schedule that we have in our lives and what we're filling our schedule with. So, for example, if we're spending our time throughout the day on our phones or on television, or wasting our time on a lot of social media platforms, you're obviously not training your soul and you're not training yourself to connect with its Lord and to connect with your own self. So what you have to do here is you don't justify not doing these things because you're saying, with the excuse that you're not feeling well, you're not, feeling energetic for it. The reason why you're not energetic could be something that you've been doing, something that you could be the cause of the lack of energy. So maybe if you cut down and allow your brain to relax for a little bit before you sleep, half an hour, for example, or 1 hour, you're not going to watch TV. And if you watch things and screen before you sleep, we all read, articles and things about the negative impact that has on the brain before sleeping and how it affects the health of your sleep. So maybe that is the factor that's causing us not to be able to connect with ourselves and connect with our Lord. So we have to figure out how to remove those. Now, after removing all of those, and we still realize that our soul is going up and down, and sometimes it has moods that are low, and sometimes it has high moods, sometimes it has balanced moods, then we can work along with those. But as long as we haven't removed the factors that we have caused, then we shouldn't allow ourselves to be relaxed and not perform the duties that we've been asked to perform. Tonight, I want to speak about Al-Abbas alayhi salam. Al-Abbas was the brother of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and he was a very fierce and courageous warrior. In the stories that are narrated about Ashura and Karbala, Al-Abbas is always presented as the guardian of Lady Zainab and the guardian of the women and the families of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Imam Hussain alayhi salam had a very strong connection to his brother. He had a lot of love for him. He had a lot of personal devotion to him, and Al-Abbas at the same time had much more devotion to Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the Imam being his leader and his master. Now, the army of Imam Hussain alayhi salam and the family members of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, they became very thirsty. And Al-Abbas alayhi salam was a very strong warrior, the son of Imam Ali alayhi salam, very fierce and very courageous. The whole family of Imam Hussain, the whole family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam were known for this. This is one of their traits and one of their virtues. So the Imam didn't permit Al-Abbas to go fight. Firstly, Al-Abbas came and asked the Imam for permission to fight in the battle. The Imam told him no. But he told him that you can go and fetch some water because the family members are crying and they're suffering without water. Al-Abbas alayhi salam stepped out of the camp and he went and he spoke to the enemies. And he spoke some harsh words to them. And he told them, how would you deny the basic need of water to the children of the Holy Prophet's grandson Al-Hussein, while you claim to be Muslims and hope for the Holy Prophet's intercession before God? What sin have these children committed that you seek to kill them? How do you justify denying water to children and women? Your conscience is clouded by the lure of wealth, and you have forsaken the teachings of Islam to reach such a low level. Well, you're not even a human being anymore if you reach a level where you deny water from children and women and from any human being. You've reached a level lower than levels of humanity. There's no humanity in you. When these words were heard by the enemies, they came and they were angered. So they came and they attacked Al-Abbas alayhi salam. Al-Abbas fought them fiercely, and he fought them very courageously. And he opened up a path to the river. He reached the river, and he put his hands in the water. But before putting his hands in the water, he told his horse to go ahead and drink water from the water. Now, the narration says that the horse looked at the water and refused to drink from it. And they say because the horse was able to feel the pain of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and to feel the pain that the family of the Rasulullah is suffering from. And animals have sensations. Animals are able to feel. They have a soul as well. They're able to feel. They're connected, especially to their owners. There's this emotional connection. The horse refused to drink water. Al-Abbas alayhi salam puts his hand in the water and comes to drink from the water. And then he remembers the thirst of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and he remembers the thirst of his family members there. So he throws the water back into the river. And then he fills the container that he brought. It was a leather container. He fills it with water, and he begins heading back to the camp. As he was going, the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad realized that they couldn't stop him. He was too strong for them. So they decided to shoot him with arrows. And they began raining arrows on him. And as he was trying to avoid them, two of the members of the enemy's army wanted to kill him. But they realized that they cannot confront him. If they confront him, then they are going to be killed. So one of them stands behind, and as he's walking behind an object, behind a tree, and as Al-Abbas alayhi salam is moving forward, he goes out and he strikes him on his right arm, and he cuts it off for him. The jug of water falls onto the ground. The Abbas alayhi salam picks it up with his left hand, and he continues to go. Al-Abbas is thinking of his thirsty family. He's thinking, his whole mind is in thinking of the children and of the women of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, thirsty and waiting for this water. The women and the children were waiting in the tent, knowing that Al-Abbas went and he's coming back with some water. And he's thinking about them. I have to get there. I have to reach to them. And as he was moving forward, another person came and struck him on his left arm, and he cut his left arm off, and the jug of water fell on the floor. Al-Abbas alayhi salam didn't have any more arms to carry the water with, but still he was determined to go back. Imagine how heartbroken he is, knowing that he got this water and he can't make it reach his sister Zainab or the family members of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. He grabs the water with his mouth, and then he gets struck on his face, and his blood comes on his eyes, and he cannot see anymore. Al-Abbas alayhi salam became weakened. The blood was leaving his body. He fell from his horse and he fell to the ground. When Imam Hussain alayhi salam saw him, he came running to him, and he cleaned his eyes because Al-Abbas alayhi salam wanted to see the face of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And when Imam Hussain alayhi salam saw him, his heart broke, and he said that my back has been broken now. Al-Abbas alayhi salam looked at him, and you can only imagine what was going through his mind and what his emotions were. He wasn't even thinking about himself. And the Imam wanted to take him back to the tent, but Al-Abbas told him, no, don't take me back to them. I'm ashamed, and I'm sorry, and I feel so bad not being able to fulfill the promise that I made to Zainab and to the children and to the woman back in the camp. The suffering of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam was tremendous and is heartbreaking. And we try to remember their tragedy throughout every year. We commemorate these 10 days, not just because we want to cry over them and feel bad and feel sorry, but the story itself is sad, and our love and our devotion to them is what connects us to these stories, even if it's just for grief. Someone who loves a person would always want to remember him, and this is something that's completely natural. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the blessing of remembering Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam every year, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to elevate our status so that we are placed in heaven with Imam Hussain alayhi salam and his companions. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.